Good day to you. So on this video I thought I would narrate it instead of allow it to be silent with music and let the pictures and video speak for itself. We're going to make the hammer, alarm hammer, in this video. We start by just drawing up on a piece of cardstock the approximate size and shape that the hammer will look like, put it in place in the movement, and just make sure that it looks appropriate for the place and similar in style to the other hammers that are present, the hammers that are for the repeating mechanism. I then take and trace, or in some form or another transfer that design over to a piece of steel stock, appropriate thickness, and then the first thing I do is drill the pivot hole for it, and then from that point on it's a whole lot of cutting and filing. This is really the bulk of fabrication, making and fabricating parts, whether it be in restoration work or whether it be in making something original. Just a lot of time is spent in some very simple basic tasks of cutting metal, filing. There's always a lot of filing. There's drilling involved, and of course, depending on the particular part, there may be a fair amount of lathe work as well. So once I have the general shape roughed out on the piece of steel, I will lay it in place where I had the drawing placed before, just to get an idea, and then we do a fair amount of fine-tuning with smaller files at the bench, including filing what I'm going to refer to as the tail. This is the part that interacts with the star wheel, the cam really that trips the hammer, lifts the hammer, allows it to fall. It's not a simple flat part like some flat parts are made out of steel. This actually has a three-dimensional aspect to it, and we've got to make sure the height of that tail is just right so it interacts with the star wheel. And here are pictures of what it looks like with the tail filed appropriately. I would then mount it on an arbor and put 2 additional pins in it, which I'll explain later, to just give it a test run and make sure that it is interacting with that star wheel correctly. And after I'm satisfied with that interaction, I'll go ahead and do the heat treatment, which is hardening the steel and then tempering it to a dark blue, and I've shown that process in other videos. It's the same process, only this piece is slightly larger than, say, a pinion. And then we go through the rigors of polishing it. Now, the other hammers in the mechanism, the hammers for the repeater, are polished to a mirror polish, and so we're going to try to match that as best we can, which we are able to do that. The process which I go through is pretty simple, but it does take a long time. The polishing takes easily as long as the actual forming and shaping of the hammer. So I start with a piece of 400 grit wet dry sandpaper that I have glued to a stick and making a polishing stick out of it. Once I have taken out all the file marks and off all the bluing from the heat treatment and have left everything with a 400 grit grain finish, then I clean it, and then I move on to a 600 grit stick, and then from the 600 grit stick I move on to a stick that I have a 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper, and I get this this sandpaper from auto parts store. Usually in their paint section they have some very fine sandpaper, and I literally could take it up to a 2500 grit if the 1000 grit wasn't sufficient. But after the 1000 grit, then I will take a similar stick, but I'll have on it a Simichrome metal polish, which puts on a really nice polish. If you aren't satisfied with the polish of Simichrome, then you can go back and follow up the 1000 grit with a 2000 or 2500 before then you finish with the Simichrome. But all those steps and the procedures that I follow through, it takes a long time, easily as long, as I said, as the cutting and filing of the piece. And then here's a picture of the part in its completed form with pins and properly heat-treated arbor on it, and then we test it in the movement, and everything seems to be running appropriately. And I wanted to explain the purpose of the pins and that I placed in there. They help to limit the travel of the hammer, and they poke through what's the dial side or the base plate of the movement, and they interact with a spring there. And at first I wasn't real sure which side of the pins that spring should be, because it is in such a position that it really could be on either side of the pins. And when I tested it, I found that the sound of the hammer striking the bell was best with the spring in that position, as opposed to on pushing from the other side of the pins. And then placing it in the case, and you get a test sound, or a hearing of what it sounds like in the case as it strikes the bell. And then I wanted to explain one other thing that I had to do here. Is the last pinion of this alarm train, I had to make a little tail or a little stop that I attach to the pinion. And the purpose of this is it will stop the mechanism from running, and it will, because there's a little trip lever and a pin that will stop it and will allow it to run when the appropriate time comes, and it will open up and allow things to run appropriately. But you need to have that little stopper on that last pinion. In closing, at this point we have a functional time mechanism and a functional alarm mechanism. That being said, there's a couple details that I would like to address in the alarm mechanism. You may have noted that as you observe the alarm mechanism to function, the wheels seem a little out of round or out of true. The reason for that is they're not permanently mounted. You'll remember back when I did the contrate wheel, after it was all set and functional, I took it off and gold plated it. I have yet to do that with the brass wheels of the alarm mechanism, and will do that probably at one time when I have all the wheels of the repeater mechanism completed too. So instead of plating one wheel at a time, just do them all at one time, all together. So I've yet to do that. They're not permanently mounted. They're just there to test for functionality. And I have some on the pinions of the alarm train here. I want to do some touch-up work on the polishing of the pinions. There's a couple of them I'm not quite satisfied with. But at this point, we have a fully functioning mechanism, and I'm pleased with how it works. It's working appropriately. And so I will address these two small issues as we go forward, but at this point, I am going to begin and proceed with the repeater mechanism. So if you're still with me this far in the video, I want to thank you for watching the video. I hope this was of benefit to you, and please stay tuned. More is sure to follow. Thank you.